It certainly was, and I'm wondering if the NHL sent out a memo about the trade deadline being rescheduled to today. That's how crazy it's been, and Friday is basically going to be a recap, and they're going to have to fill time with the TSN panel like they did the one year, where they'll all bring in their Harvey's Burgers, and we'll be watching O-Dog sitting there eating and...
You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah!
Good evening and welcome to episode 161 of the podcast. Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne with you for this one as we're getting closer to the NHL trade deadline, but we feel like it's already kind of happened with the flurry of moves that have happened today. Before we get into all of that, boys, how we doing?
Doing good, Harp. Just came back from a trip to Mont Tremblant. Got a lot of skiing in, lots of fresh powder, and lots of other shenanigans. So it was a good weekend for me. How you doing, Chad?
Very nice. Same here. Good weekend all around. Had the place to myself. Paige was skiing as well, but in Ottawa. So had the place to myself and just enjoyed a lot of video games and relaxing, and it was great. So yeah, great weekend. Crazy day, Harper. You mentioned it right off the top. We're recording this on Tuesday. It'll be out as soon as I can on Wednesday. It felt like the trade deadline was today, even though it's at 3 o'clock on Friday. So lots to talk about, including a few massive trades that happened in between our last episode recording and this one. So just a lot to talk about. Such a fun time to be a hockey fan.
Man, I feel bad for TSN. That's all I can think about every single time a trade is announced. I'm like, man, the execs are pulling their hair out right now. James Duffy is scrambling to figure out what he can say about the Meier trade for the next 6 hours of the trade deadline day. It's like, it's the same thing as that happened last year, was all the trades happened a few days before the deadline, and then they sat there just saying the same things about the same trades over and over and over again because there's nothing else going on trade deadline day. So yeah, every time I hear a trade, I think of the TSN guys or all those other networks. I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of filler space that they'll have because not a lot of trades will be going down on deadline day because a lot of them have already gone down. And it was funny today, I was listening to just randomly on YouTube, the Real Kipper and Bourne show. You guys know I kind of frequent that show occasionally, and they just got lucky. They were recording at their normal time, and it just so happened that everything happened while they were recording. Same with Overdrive. A ton was happening while they were recording, so they kind of got lucky there, and it was kind of like a makeshift deadline show from both of those podcasts. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, like I said, great time to be a Leaf fan, even though I got absolutely nothing done today because I was glued to my computer checking Twitter and Instagram and everything, seeing if there were any other trades, not just including the Leafs, but around the rest of the NHL. It was a wild day.
It certainly was, and I'm wondering if the NHL sent out a memo about the trade deadline being rescheduled to today. That's how crazy it's been, and Friday is basically going to be a recap, and they're going to have to fill time with the TSN panel like they did the one year, where they'll all bring in their Harvey's Burgers, and we'll be watching O-Dog sitting there eating, and anyway, but still looking forward to Friday, and we're going to see some good deals on Friday, I think, as well. But a lot has happened, and let's get into it. So basically, this is how we're going to do it. We've got 5 big trades that we're going to cover, and then the ones from today that we're just kind of going to go through in a rapid-fire kind of way. So let's start with the one that took place late last week. So this was last Thursday, and the Boston Bruins loading up here with Dmitry Orlov and Garnet Hathaway from the Washington Capitals in exchange for Craig Smith, a 2023 first-rounder, a second in 2025, and a third in 2024. Minnesota picking up 25% of Orlov's salary, and Boston retaining 50%, or excuse me, Washington retaining 50% of the Bruins, of Orlov's salary. So let's start with this one, guys. This one was a pretty big deal for the Boston Bruins, and they kind of kickstarted all of this.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I saw this trade for Washington's sake. I would have thought that, they'd try to push for 1, maybe 2 more years, try to stay competitive for the aging core that's there. But as soon as I saw this, it was like, okay, I guess it's time to tear down for Washington, and the rich get richer with Boston. This D core is going to be ridiculous to play against. Orlov is one of those guys where you can constantly send him out against the other team's best line and say, stay on him, stay on Jack Hughes, stay on Marner, stay on whoever, and he'll keep up with them and shut them down, really. He is such a shutdown guy, and then he can contribute as well. So you're going to pair him with McAvoy, and that's a disgusting top pair. And then the D just gets deeper after that. So amazing for Boston to pick him up. And then adding Hathaway, just adding to the number of pricks on this team, and Boston stays the same they've always been. So yeah, this team, first place in the league, having the best season, way better than Carolina. So yeah, I'm going to mention that every episode now. No, it's a great trade. At least they're doing something. They did trade a lot for this, but it's kind of the going rate for a top 4 defenseman and a bottom 6 forward, as we've seen so far. So big trade, good value both ways. Washington getting a lot back, and this kicked it all off, and it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it certainly was. In case, what I was going to say is we're still getting comments trickling in on those videos, despite the fact that you gave Carolina an A+ in that video. I just wanted to say. Well,
Carolina's done absolutely shit all to get better at this trade deadline so far, so they're the only ones in the top 6 of the East that haven't done anything other than pick up Poop Party. So
yeah, I would expect that to change too. I think they're in on a lot of players. I think Harp, like you said last episode though, when we were talking about the Timo Meier deals, they kind of just set their price internally and don't go over it. So I could still see them, chasing a Brock Besser or a Tyler Bertuzzi or someone like that to give you middle 6 scoring.
Carolina will keep the trade deadline interesting for us.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so talking about this trade case, you're absolutely right. What a solid player Dmitry Orlov is. He can play anywhere in this Bruins top 6 defensive pairings here. He can play on the top pair with McAvoy, which is where he's been slotted in, I think, tentatively right now. They're going to probably put him in a position to succeed and then see basically how far they can push him down and play him in different situations and kind of see how it all shakes out. But that D-core is looking great. Hathaway as well, such a Bruins player, exactly what they need, fits their identity perfectly. So just an absolute win. I think the price was probably the going rate, and when you're getting 2 players for that are going to help your team right now, a team that's already first place in the NHL by a long shot, I think you don't even really worry about the price. You just get it done. So I love the trade for the Bruins. I hate it for my Maple Leafs and everybody else in the Eastern Conference, but great trade for the Bruins. And you're right, as I was kind of the same way. As soon as I saw Washington make both of those players scratches that evening, I was like, okay, here we go. And by all accounts, from all of the insiders, this deal came together pretty quickly. And it was one of those things where they scratched them, and then it wasn't, now we have to wait a week. It was, okay, they're out of the lineup. We made our decision. What can we get for these guys? And then we'll worry about turning it around for Ovi's last couple years next season. We'll do it then. So I love the trade. Orlov wasn't signed past this year. None of their defensemen are signed past this year, by the way, except for John Carlson.
Rasmus Sandin. Oh, no, he's not signed.
He is. Actually, he has one more year. That's right.
Year. Okay.
Rasmus Sandin at $1.4 million. So, man, they had to do it. They had to get some return, and I think they realized they couldn't sign him and said, you know what, screw it. Let's get a pick, and let's see what we can do. Love the trade for both sides, honestly.
Yeah, and we should quickly mention that the first rounder from Boston, which is going to be 32nd by all accounts, there was talk about Washington flipping that for a defenseman, maybe a Chychrun or someone like that, but they did choose Rasmus Sandin from your Maple Leafs chat, a young D, obviously, who's kind of been squeezed out of the lineup in Toronto, and so Sandin goes to Washington for a first, and Eric Gustafsson, who's had a good season there. So quick mention of that. But on this deal, I think this is really nice work by Don Sweeney, which I hate to say, but listen, he's made a lot of moves that have worked, and this is another one that makes so much sense. It makes way more sense to get Orlov and Hathaway for these pieces rather than giving up a first and a third for Gavrikov, which is apparently what Columbus is looking for. Apparently, according to Columbus, they thought they had a deal done with Boston and all of that, but I think they got the better defenseman, and they really wanted Garnet Hathaway. He's got connections to Massachusetts. Boston was his childhood team, and that guy's a Bruin through and through. So love this deal for Boston, and they get a whole lot stronger.
And now, a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. Whether you're staying active or nursing a hangover, Liquid IV has you covered. Just one stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C, with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, it's non-GMO, and it's free from gluten, dairy, and soy. There are plenty of awesome flavors, but my personal favorite right now is lemon lime. So get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code boys_in_the_booth at checkout. That's 20% off anything in the store when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today with Liquid IV. This podcast is also sponsored by the best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code Boys in the Booth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code Boys in the Booth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
All right, so that's that one. Now let's move on to the big trade involving your New Jersey Devils case. And, of course, this came on Sunday night. So Timo Meier going from the San Jose Sharks to the New Jersey Devils, along with a crap ton of other players. Like in general, there were so many players involved in this deal, which was really surprising. So Meier goes to New Jersey along with Scott Harrington, depth defenseman. He got claimed actually by Anaheim today off of waivers. Santeri Hadika, Timur Abrizhamov, okay, my bad, and Zach Imond, and a 2024 fifth rounder. Probably butchered a few of those American Hockey League names, but anyway, so that all goes to New Jersey. And then to San Jose, Andreas Johnsson and his cap hit, Shakir Mukhamadullin, of course, the big Russian defenseman, first round pick, Nikita Okoychuk, Fabian Zetterlund, as rumored, good forward there, a 2023 first, a conditional 2024 first, and a 2024 seventh going to the San Jose Sharks. So, as we shared on our Instagram, Case, you were pretty bang on with this one. Obviously, we didn't predict all of these other American Hockey League players and prospects to be involved in this one, but you have to be thrilled with this as a Devils fan, and you kind of called this one. So let's go to you first with this deal. Yeah,
just a quick correction. The 2024 first is actually a second round pick that's conditional.
Yes,
and if they reach the Eastern Conference Finals this year or next year, it becomes a first. And they'll have the option to defer that to a 2025 based off a couple other conditions. But yeah, I couldn't be happier about this trade. Like, I like Fabian Zetterlund a lot. I like Okoychuk, how he plays, and Shakir was very interesting to me always, but You just got Timo Meier, the San Jose Sharks leading scoring forward, 30-goal guy, physical winger who's going to play alongside either Nico or Jack. And you didn't have to give up Holtz, Nemitz, Hughes, Seamus Casey, or Dawson Mercer. How can you not be thrilled about that as a Devils fan? I saw someone put it pretty plainly the other day. I think Chad might have sent it to me, but it was like the Devils traded a first, their 5th ranked prospect, their 13th ranked prospect, a bottom 6 forward, and an AHL forward for Timo Meier and a bunch of random nonsense. So, yeah, pretty freaking thrilled about this. I'm just happy that he's coming to New Jersey, but the return makes me even happier.
Yeah, Case, like, you've got to be just absolutely pumped. And I think any Devils fan or a fan of any team who got this player would have been just as thrilled, even if you gave up double the pieces, because that's how good the player is. But the fact that you didn't have to give up any of your A prospects is ridiculous. And going back to last week's episode when we talked about mock trades for Timo Meier going to New Jersey, the second one that you proposed, like Harper mentioned, was almost bang on. It was a deal centered around Shakir Mukhamadullin and a first-round pick. I said then that I didn't think that was very sexy or appealing as a package because I value quality over quantity. And you know what? The San Jose Sharks just completely disagreed with that. They wanted to get quantity over quality, and that's exactly what they did. They got a ton of pieces, and Mukhamadulin's good. I said last episode that maybe the Devils value him higher than some other teams around the league. Maybe that's still the case, but San Jose clearly values him as a pretty good prospect as well, and that's why they made the deal to get him. So I love the return for New Jersey, that is, not having to give up much to get Timo Meier, because Timo Meier is just a fantastic player, the perfect fit on this team. The only thing is now they have to get a deal done, and we all know the qualifying offer is $10 million. We're all expecting them to get an 8-year deal signed with Timo Meier for less than $10 million. I just hope it doesn't become the case in the offseason where it drags out and it ends up costing them a shitload of money, because Timo Meier's really good, but I just hope they don't overpay him and give him like $11 million or something stupid. They won't, but they're a smart team. But you got to absolutely love it, Case.
Yeah. The scary thing about the contract is whatever happens to Timo Meier is going to directly impact Jesper Bratt and how much money he's going to demand. It's such a mess already because Bratt deserves good money, but does he deserve more than Jack Hughes? No, but Jack has a good contract. Does he deserve more than Hischier? Probably not. Even better contract. So does he deserve as much as Timo Meier? We'll see. Like, what are they going to do with Jesper Bratt? That's the big thing to me. Tom Fitzgerald said the other day that he is hashing out a contract as they speak between him and the interviewer with Jesper Bratt's agent. So I kind of hope that they get the Bratt deal done so that the Meier contract doesn't have an impact on him.
True, I forgot about Bratt. 2 big deals to sign, but if they get them both done, they're set forever with their young
top 4
coming
forwards
up
for a long time.
Yeah. No, those are excellent points for sure. And Case, I agree with you. I mean, it surprised me how many players and picks were in this deal. It kind of reminded me of the Claude Giroux trade from Philly to Florida at last year's deadline or beforehand. Just the fact that Philadelphia gave up pieces along with Giroux in the deal, and San Jose did that as well. We're not really sure if they're going to be of any significance. A lot of AHL players and young guys who we don't really know a lot about. But yeah, the fact that you didn't have to give up any of those guys that you mentioned, you could even throw Chase Stillman in there, who's another good prospect for the Devils that we haven't mentioned over these last few weeks. But this is excellent work by Tom Fitzgerald, and there's no question about it. For San Jose, this deal revolves around Shakir Mukhamadullin turning into that high-end top 4 defenseman that we envision him turning into, but it's kind of a question mark. He is a Russian kid. He's going to be over there for a while, and we just don't know what he's going to turn into. So I do think there's a bit of risk here from Mike Greer and company in San Jose, but we'll see. In the meantime, right now, you'd have to say that your Devils are the winner, and he's just the perfect player for them. He's exactly what they needed. They needed size. They needed someone who can play ugly and put the puck in the back of the net, and that's exactly what they have. Also helps that he's a Swiss-born player as well, as we've mentioned before, with Hischier and Siegenthal are already there. So, yeah, this is great work.
10 in the league, Swiss players, and 4 are on New Jersey.
Who's the fourth?
Akir Schmid.
Right.
Man, he's been good this year too. Like he's been really good this year.
927 save percentage in like 10 games or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I believe he's top 5 in goals saved above expected per 60. He hasn't played that much, so he hasn't been able to accumulate that number, but the per 60 number is really, really good.
And Nico Dawes is an AHL All-Star, so
there you go. Like the Devils, if they can keep everybody together, like eventually pieces are going to have to move and like this is way in the future when they're going to have to re-sign their young defensemen who aren't on the team yet. But I'm talking about like Nemec and Hughes and stuff. But if they can keep this group together for the next 3-4 years, like disgusting and dangerous. Like it's going to be awesome to watch. And the East isn't getting worse anytime soon.
No.
And Case, not to stroke your Devils off or stroke you off too much here, but I think that Jack Hughes will be on some Hart Trophy ballots this season for sure.
Oh yeah, I think he'll be top 3.
Definitely. Anyway, excellent work, and your team is in the postseason. No surprise there. How far they go, that remains the question, but they will be one of the big players in the East, that's for sure, after making this deal. All right, moving on to another team in the Eastern Conference that made another whopper of a deal, and this is classic. Julien BriseBois and Tampa Bay Lightning business. So certainly a deal that caught a lot of people by surprise, but again, it's Tampa Bay. We've seen this before. So Tanner Jeannot, young bottom 6 forward who had a great year in Nashville last year. Not so much this year. He's a great story, kind of a late bloomer. Tampa Bay gets him from Nashville in exchange for a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, and defenseman Cal Foote. So almost an entire draft, and a young defenseman in Cal Foote. So again, guys, we've seen this before with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, initially I wanted to just dump all over this trade because this is just way too much to trade for any bottom 6 player, but Tampa Bay does it every single year, and they win a cup or go deep. So I'm not going to talk too much shit, but Tanner Jeannot, he's intriguing because if they can turn him back around into the player he was last year, this year Nashville's struggling to score goals in general, so that's probably not helping him. But if he can be that guy who he was last year, then this is another Hagel or Paul or anyone that Tampa adds. It's just going to make them better because they do it every single year. But man, is that a lot of picks. And Cal Foote. I thought they liked Cal Foote.
I know. I thought they liked him too. So like, not only is it almost an entire draft class, but it's a first round pick, homegrown defenseman, a guy who they picked and developed. So
yeah, it's essentially it's 2 first round picks plus all the other ones, if you look at it that way.
Like, I get it. I understand Tampa Bay is a better team now than they were before this trade, period, because Tanner Jeannot adds to that deep forward group. But I think if you're Tampa Bay, could you not have used those assets to get a defenseman where I think is a bigger need for the team? Like, Tanner Jeannot just seems like a luxury that, maybe sure, you can say you can afford it if you're Tampa Bay because they seem to have done, like, they've done that every year and it's worked out for them. They've gone to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals and they won 2 of them. But, like, man, I think the bigger need for this team is on the back end since losing Ryan McDonough. And Tanner Jeannot, I don't think moves the needle at all. And to give up 2 first-round picks or equivalent and almost the rest of a draft class, like, can you imagine, and I know it's not fair to compare, but could you imagine if Kyle Dubas did that, traded Rasmus Sandin and a first-round pick and the rest of a draft class for Tanner Jeannot? Like, it wouldn't. The conversation would be completely different, and obviously that's because of the history of the Tampa Bay Lightning and the success they've had in the playoffs. But in terms of value, like straight up value, it is a disaster for Tampa Bay. And if they lose in the first round, if the Leafs somehow beat them in the first round, if they're able to get over the hump, like, this trade will be catastrophic for their future. It will be worse than the Nick Foligno trade in Toronto. It will be worse than anything. Like, that's 2 first-round picks or equivalent and the rest of a draft class almost for a bottom 6 player. I know he had a good year last year. I know that. He has 15 points or something this year. It's not even close. He's not that same player. And they need to add on the back end. To me, value-wise, like, I get it, they're a better team now, but value-wise, they got absolutely fleeced in this deal.
If you look at just the forward core, all 12, you look at all 12 of the forwards, this is a good playoff team. Holy shit, is it good?
Oh, yeah.
Then you look at the D and you go, okay, maybe not so much. Maybe they'll be the ones that are overpaying on Gavrikov with whatever draft picks they have left, but yeah, it's definitely a little scary. And honestly, if I was Toronto, I'd be a little happier right now.
4 first-round picks or equivalent, plus the rest of a draft class, and 2 other homegrown prospects for Brandon Hagel, who's a good player, really good player. Good, he's a legit top 6 player.
Career season.
And Tanner Jeannot. That, to me, is just brutal asset management. And like, if you're Tampa, you don't care because you're trying to win another one while you still have these players, and then you're going to completely tear it down and rebuild, and that's fine. But just in terms of the actual value, this was a whopper. Like, just, not even close.
I'm done talking shit because they've won 2 cups in the last 3 years, so I'm just going to...
And you know what? They'll probably beat Toronto in Game 7 again this year. And Tanner Jeannot will score the overtime winner. And I'll look like a clown. And I'm not debating. I'm not saying they're not a better team. They very clearly are now with Tanner Jeannot. Just in terms of value, it's such a bad trade.
You know, it is very lopsided. And the assets that they gave Nashville, it's nuts. But I mean, we've seen this before. Like I said right off the top, it started with Barclay Goodrow, a first-round pick. How effective was he in their Stanley Cup run the year that they picked him up? Blake Coleman, same thing. Brandon Hagel, Nick Paul, who they didn't have to give up that much for, scored 2 goals in that Game 7 victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs last year. And now Tanner Jeannot. I am not going against Julien Brisebois and the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have done this time and time again. We've absolutely ripped them for what they give away in these deals, but they've worked. They always work. It's the Tampa Bay Lightning. They do this every year. They find that gritty third-line prick that can fit into their lineup, and Tanner Jeannot is that. He's going to be great in Tampa. I agree, if they don't win in the first round, very disappointing, but I have a hard time going against Tampa because we have enough of a track record here with these kinds of deals that look so lopsided, but they work, and they know which players to go after and insert into their lineup. And Brisebois did make a good point as well that once you get by a certain point in the draft, it's a very low percentage of any of these picks becoming good quality full-time NHL players, but it's a risk. There's no doubt about it. If you're looking at this as a Predators fan, you're laughing. And you get Cal Foote as well. Like, this is perfect for the Predators who are transitioning into a retool/rebuild, but have a hard time going against Brisebois and the Lightning, man. They've done this time and time again, and it's always worked. Good point, too, about the blue line. I know that's been an issue the last couple of games with John Cooper. Nick Perbix has certainly been a nice surprise for them this season. You look at Sergachev, Hedman. They added Ian Cole in the offseason, but if they get really banged up on the blue line, that's going to be a problem for them. There's no question about it. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, I think this is going to work out somehow, like it always has for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
The last thing I'll say on this is this deal tells me two really key things about the Tampa Bay Lightning right now. Number one, they want to win a cup again, this season or next. Like, this is their win now window 100%. Like, they are all in.
Yeah.
And number two, Julien Brisebois really trusts his scouting staff to find some late round picks who are going to hit. Because if you're willing to give up that many first rounders, like, you got to trust your guys. And, you know, time has shown us that they have some pretty good scouting staff, pretty good people in their scouting staff, and they've made some pretty good picks over time. So, I mean, be confident in them all you want.
No kidding. Probably the best hockey department in the NHL. Steve Yzerman was your GM, moves on to Detroit. Brisebois takes over. Pat Verbeek, a part of that staff, now the GM of the Anaheim Ducks. So there you go. All right, moving on from that deal between the Lightning and the Predators to your Toronto Maple Leafs, Chad, who were super busy today, and they pulled off this one yesterday. This is a big deal for them. So they get Jake McCabe at 50% retained. So 3 more years, 2 after this one, at $2 million, so half of his $4 million cap hit. Sam Lafferty, another good bottom 6 forward, and a conditional 2024 fifth and a conditional 5th in 2025. In exchange for Joey Anderson, Pavel Gogolev going to the Blackhawks, along with a conditional 1st in 2025 and a 2nd in 2026. So definitely some futures going to the Blackhawks there, but this is an all-in move for the Toronto Maple Leafs. How do you feel?
You want me to start, or do you want Casey to go?
We'll start with you. We started with Case, obviously, with his Devils and the Meier deal, so we'll start with you. Might as well.
Okay, well, like, the deal to me, like, I can't even focus on it because of how much has happened today and how many balls are still in the air for the Leafs as we speak. Like, they have 9 defensemen, 9 legit NHL defensemen on their roster right now, and only 12 forwards and cap space to work with. And they haven't activated Matt Murray yet. So I truly don't know what they're going to do next. Kyle is keeping me in the dark and everybody else in the dark in terms of what he's going to do. But in terms of this trade, getting Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty automatically makes your team better. McCabe fits in as a top 4 defenseman, and he's there for another 2 years at $2 million retained. Like, there's your Justin Hall replacement next season, because he's a UFA at the end of the year. So you don't need that $2 million on the cap. You have Jake McCabe's $2 million on the cap for another 2 years after this one. And Sam Lafferty is also re-signed next season as well. So basically, I mean, depending what they do, your defense is set for next year, and your bottom 6 has a lot of key guys signed, but also a lot of flexibility there too, with more players coming off the books. So, talking about this trade and the one they did last week, they got Ryan O'Reilly, Noel Acciari, Sam Lafferty, and Jake McCabe, and they gave up 2 first-round picks, basically, and a couple players in there. Whatever, like, I think the value is great for the Maple Leafs, and I think they're way better right now. And I'm finally, I can finally say that they're all in, and I'm super excited about that. Thank you, Kyle Dubas, for doing something. It's so exhilarating. Truly, I love both trades.
I like the trade for Toronto. Finally, they're going all out here and trying to win a playoff series, bringing in tough to play against players. That's really what they've been lacking at times, and bringing in McCabe is exactly that. He's hard to play against. He throws his body around like crazy, so that's going to be a good piece for Toronto. And then to have him for multiple years, like, that's great. The value goes up even higher when you talk about those 2 extra years at $2 million. And then Lafferty, I want to manage some expectations here, because he's not a 30-point guy. He's a 30-point guy this year because he's been playing top 6 in Chicago. But he has a Swiss Army knife. He'll play in the bottom 6, and he'll play hard in the bottom 6. Toronto's finally shuffled that bottom 6 around where it's not 4 or 5 of the same player. They've mixed it up. They've got Achari in there now, Lafferty, Engvall's out. It's looking much better in my eyes. So I gotta like that piece. And then they gave up, I think, market value for a top 4 defenseman. Lafferty's a bonus in my eyes. So this is a good deal.
And if you guys have noticed, like, we're seeing a trend here with trades where 2 players are going together in a lot of these deals. And so I think that, everyone's going to focus on that one guy. Everyone's going to focus on Jake McCabe being a part of this deal, obviously. Solid top 4 defenseman. I've always been a fan of Jake McCabe. As you guys know, he started out as a Buffalo Sabre. He's going to be pumped because that guy has never played a single playoff game in his entire NHL career. He's going to be excited, and he's a good player. I like McCabe. He's exactly what they need. And it's interesting he ends up going to Toronto when a lot of the other Canadian teams were on his no-trade list as well. And
every single other one was on his no-trade list.
Yeah, exactly. And then Sam Lafferty, again, Case, you said it, Swiss Army knife, a solid bottom 6 forward who has some grit, and he just fits in so well. So they're adding the right players, because we've seen the Leafs kind of go all in before, a first-round pick for Nick Foligno and what have you, but I think they're going after the right guys here. O'Reilly has fit in like a glove. Achari has been good so far. You're adding guys like Lafferty and McCabe and others, which we're going to get to. But this is great for Toronto. Happy for Joey Anderson. I think he's going to get a great opportunity to play some more in Chicago. And there you go. Yeah, Leafs are all in. I love this deal. I love these 2 players going to Toronto.
Yeah, and another thing about Lafferty as well, great penalty killer, leads the league in shorthanded goals right now because he's super fast. I think that's an underrated piece, honestly. Similar to how I think Achari was an underrated piece coming from St. Louis in that deal, in the ROR trade, because Achari is really good on the dot and is good defensively and brings some grit to your bottom 6. Well, Lafferty, I think, will boost the Leafs' penalty killing, because that's been a bit of a weakness for them this year. Last year, the Leafs had one of the best penalty kills in the NHL. I think the best that I've ever seen on a Maple Leafs team, and that was mostly because of Ilya Mikheyev, believe it or not. He had a ton of shorthanded goals, and he just played with a pace shorthanded that you just don't really have many guys on the Leafs who can kind of fill that need. So I'm hoping Sam Lafferty now will be a mainstay on the penalty kill, along with a guy like Mitch Marner and David Kampf, who not only are good defensively, but can also give you a bit of a threat at the other end on your penalty kill, which I think is kind of the new age of killing penalties. So I love Lafferty for that reason. It's great that he plays center and wing as well, similar to an Achari, similar to a bunch of guys that they have. So no matter where you are on the ice, whether you're on a guy's strong side or weak side, you can always find a player who has a good chance to win a draw. So I think that's also an underrated thing about Lafferty and Achari as well.
And again, they're not rentals. Can't stress that enough. And really, it's not a lot for the Leafs to handle cap-wise. $2 million, and then I think $1.5 million for this year and next for Sam Lafferty. So that's huge as well. And funny enough, the top 3 teams in that Atlantic Division, they all went out and they got the same player, really. Garnet Hathaway to Boston, Jeannot to Tampa, Sam Lafferty to Toronto. It's going to be fascinating to watch how these 3 teams fare in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, all right, those are the 4 big ones that we wanted to touch on, and now we're just kind of do a rapid fire through a lot of the deals that we saw today. So starting with this one, guys, Jesse Puljujarvi, his days in Edmonton are finally over. He goes to the Carolina Hurricanes, another contender in the East, in exchange for prospect Patrick Puistola. So a lot of people looking at this deal as a win for the Carolina Hurricanes. Let's get grades from you two on this deal.
Yeah, I don't know. This deal isn't very sexy in my eyes for either team, really. Doesn't mean much to me. I am happy that the Puljujarvi trade talk is going to be over, because that's been going on for 3 years now. But this seems like a familiar player to Carolina, so I'm going to assume that he's going to fit in well, because they seem to have a couple guys like him. And he's got some buddies over there in Aho and Kokiniemi, so good trade, I guess. I'll give it like a B for both sides.
I was thinking the same thing, Case. B for both sides, because it's a B for Edmonton because they finished this saga. It's over now. They don't have to deal with it anymore. Puljujarvi was never going to be a better player than he currently is in Edmonton, which is just absurd because he's been able to play with some of the best players on the planet and hasn't been able to figure it out. But it's also a B for Carolina because they gave up an unsigned prospect, really, a guy. Like, had either of you guys heard of him before today? Because I hadn't. It's a guy who's unsigned. Who knows if he ever plays? I know nothing about him. For Jesse Puljujarvi, who was a 4th overall pick a few years back. So, listen, if Puljujarvi can put together some sort of season that, where he's able to salvage this season and salvage his career in Carolina, being, a third guy on an offensive line as sort of like a forechecker, a guy who goes and gets the puck, sure, that's perfect. That's great for Carolina, and I think it will make more sense for him playing in Carolina than Edmonton. I think he'll figure it out there, if anywhere. So, to me, I really like it for both sides, and B's all around, I guess.
They're going to have potentially a 3rd and 4th overall Finnish player playing in their bottom 6 at some point.
Couple busts. But, the thing is, at least, like, Puljujarvi, to me, Kokiniemi, right, you can say he's not worth his deal yet or anything, or you can say that you didn't like the deal and it was kind of an odd situation how they offer sheeted him and whatnot. But I think Puljujarvi brings something different than Kokiniemi does. He's a great forechecker. Like, I really like his forechecking game. It just hasn't worked out in Edmonton. And Case, something I sent both you and Harp earlier today I thought was funny. Same amount of points as Tanner Jeannot right now. I know they're different players, hard to compare, but same amount of goals and points as Tanner Jeannot right now, and look at the return he fetched.
Yeah, one has double the hits and is playing on a team that's struggling, and the other played with Connor McDavid and had 15 points. So it is a weird comparison, but yeah, it is a comparison to make. And if you think about it that way, then wow, Carolina made out like bandits here.
Yeah.
But I think Edmonton, they needed to get this out of their mind. They needed to clear up some cap space to make another trade. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense for them.
And I don't think that Carolina is done either with adding people who can put the puck in the back of the net. Puljujarvi, we'll see if he can do that, but I wonder about a guy like Nick Schmaltz or someone else for Carolina that can help score some goals there. All right, next
a deep
one.
Team.
What's that, Case?
Carolina is a deep team.
Very
deep up front.
Very balanced, too.
Yes, they are.
They don't have all their money tied up in 4 players. Oh, wait, that's not a bad thing, is it? Tell me that's a good thing, guys.
We'll see if it's a bad thing or not again this year. Anyway, another kind of minor deal. Marcus Johansson goes from Washington back to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for a 3rd-round pick in 2024. That's not all the Wild did. Very recently here, as we've been recording, they picked up Gustav Nyquist from the Columbus Blue Jackets for a 2023 5th. So we'll group in these two deals together. Grades for these ones, boys.
Man, am I ever tired of hearing Marcus Johansson get traded. How many teams has he been on now? This is also his 2nd time in Minnesota after being his second time in Washington.
Yep.
So it's getting wild. I feel bad for guys like that because how many times has he had to move? And if he has a family, then that makes it even worse. But just looking at it here, it's Washington, then New Jersey, then Boston, then Buffalo, then Minnesota, then Seattle, then Washington, then Minnesota again. So
holy,
wow. That's pretty wild. But well, speaking of the Wild, they get even more veteran presence up front, so that it's going to help their team. A third-round pick, I don't think is crazy to send for Marcus Johansson. He's been pretty productive this year in Washington, and we've seen a lot of production from him in the past. So maybe they can unlock something in Minnesota because they need someone else scoring goals other than just Kirill. So we'll see how that works out for them. And sorry, what was the second part of this?
Nyquist to Minnesota from Columbus for.
I hadn't seen the information on that yet, but I mean, I think that Nyquist might be better than Johansson, and they traded a fifth for him. But Nyquist is hurt, if I believe. I think he's on IR, and Minnesota better be careful because the NHL sent out a very direct message about acquiring people to put directly on the IR for playoff and cap shielding and all that nonsense. So we'll see how that plays out.
I just want to know if Minnesota has somebody on their staff who understands the salary cap. Because at this point, I don't know if they do. I don't know if they're playing 4D chess or if they just don't get it. Like, do they have a guy who does that? Like, I truly don't understand. They have $13 million in dead cap right now from their two buyouts. They have been retaining on two previous deals that we mentioned, retaining salary on players. They retained on Ryan O'Reilly and on Orlov. But now they're buying and flipping picks that they got for retaining those contracts. Like, to me, I just don't understand what they're doing cap-wise. I don't even have like a point to say about this. I just don't get it. I don't understand what they're doing.
It's like money laundering going on.
Yeah, like, and then they acquire Nyquist on LTIR. Like, again, more cap shenanigans. Like, is this good for them? Is it bad? I truly don't know. With these two deals, though, I don't think they're big enough to warrant like real grades. But I'll give all teams a B. Because sure, I just think like Minnesota gets better with those two players again if Nyquist is healthy, but also like if they wanted to buy, why wouldn't they clear cap space and go get someone? It makes no sense. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. That's where I'm at with Minnesota.
It's Bill Guerin. You're not supposed to get it, and that $14 million in dead cap.
Put that on a T-shirt, man. That's good. Bill Guerin, you're not supposed to get it.
He is a fearless GM and a pretty funny guy for sure. So yeah, I'm glad you guys like that. But and just a note about the $14 million in dead cap from the Parise and Suter buyouts, that really doesn't kick in until next season. But I'm with you. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but in a way, like, it is really smart. However, they're doing it, picking up a lot of these late round picks and then flipping them after. For some impact players. So again, I'm with you. Don't know how they're doing it, but it's Bill Guerin. You're not supposed to get it. So,
are you sure those buyouts haven't kicked in yet? I thought for sure that this was the first year of them kicking in. I could be wrong. I just thought off the top of my head maybe it was. Let me just.
I mean, I could be wrong myself.
Dude, they count this year
right now to Parise and
12.7. So they're like. They could have, I mean, okay, I don't want to get into their whole cap situation, but
yeah,
they could be in a better place cap-wise, so I don't understand why they're retaining money and then acquiring
paying Ryan O'Reilly
players.
And Orlov and
yeah, why not trade for Ryan O'Reilly and get someone else to retain? Like,
are you both in the playoff run and keeping up with Arizona on buying that cap?
What a weird team. And something else too, like, Case, you mentioned that the league sent out the thing on the salary cap, like you know, beware from buying players who are just going to be stashed on LTIR, like basically a warning to teams doing that. You know, they give a warning about that, but then Arizona is allowed to be brought up to the cap floor because they have $30 million in dead cap, and Gary doesn't give a shit about that. So just double standards with the salary cap, man. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing with the cap? This is so stupid. We can't even make trades ahead of the deadline. I mean, this is a good year for it. For once, we're making trades ahead of the deadline, but there's so many cap. Anyway, whatever. Enough about the cap. I got fed up about it for a sec.
No, that's okay. And just to clarify, so yeah, 12.7 of dead cap this year for Minnesota. Then I think it jumps to 14 next year. That's where we got mixed up a little bit. I'm pretty sure that's...
Yeah, 14.7 next year.
Okay, perfect. There we go. All right, we can do these, all three of these with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They made all three of these deals today. Starting with a pretty eyebrow-raising one, Chad, I know that this surprised you, certainly surprised my brother, Emerson, because it involves his Washington Capitals. So that 2023 first-rounder that Washington got from Boston, that's going to be, of course, at the bottom of the first round in the Orlov deal. So they send that along with Erik Gustafsson, who's had a great year with Washington on the blue line, to the Maple Leafs for Rasmus Sandin. A pretty big deal and pretty surprising. Thoughts on this one?
Case, do you want to go? You want me to go?
You go. It's Maple Leaf stuff. I'm just going to babble. So.
Okay. Well, I am truly shocked and appalled by this deal. Rasmus Sandin, I truly thought was going to be a Leaf for the foreseeable future. Like, he signed for next year at a good cap hit, the exact same deal as Liljegren. Kyle Dubas traded down in the 2018 draft to get Rasmus Sandin. That was actually the first pick that Kyle Dubas officially made as general manager. And it was his guy from the Sioux, an undersized, puck-moving defenseman with a bit of bite. That's exactly what Rasmus Sandin is. The problem, as we all know, he hasn't got a fair, or I wouldn't say it was unfair. He's had a fair shot, but he hasn't been given ample opportunity in Toronto to play big minutes or meaningful minutes. And that was one of the reasons why he came into this season not wanting to sign a contract with the Maple Leafs. Like, he took them right up until training camp because he wasn't sure where he fit in on this team. I'm still just truly shocked, though. I thought they would keep Sandin as long as they could as depth and as a future piece. That being said, great value in return for the trade. Like, really great value. So,
really, that's what I was going to say. It's like the value is excellent when you think about what you're supposed to give up for a top four defenseman, and that's really what Erik Gustafsson has been this year. You're supposed to give up a first plus, like a Jake McCabe or all the other defensemen we've seen traded so far, or Orlov, Ekholm, whatever. I'm not saying that Gustafsson's as good as either of those two, but the value, it's a lot for a top four defenseman. You're supposed to give up a lot for that, and now they get a first and a top four defenseman. So the value is great, but it didn't make any sense to me at all. I didn't see Sandin getting traded anytime soon. We talk about how much Toronto needs a puck-moving defenseman at this point now, and they just trade the one they have, the one that resembles a puck-moving defenseman the most, other than Morgan Rielly, who can't score for the life of him right now. It's a little confusing, but I guess Gustafsson's quickly going to fill that role, and then you get a first-round pick out of it. And let's slow down with the first-round pick talk, because essentially it's a second-round pick.
Exactly, yes. But, I mean, I'm not convinced that Gustafsson is going to play for Toronto in regular minutes. I think, like, right now they have 9 defensemen on the team. I think Gustafsson might be, like, the 8th, maybe? Like,
I think you run into the case where you're playing a lot of the same guys if you don't play Gustafsson.
What do you mean by that, playing the same guys?
McCabe, Hole, Schenn, all these guys are
okay,
similar.
Yes, I see what you're saying. And I get that. I just don't know where he really fits in, to be honest, full-time in the top 6. So I still think they're going to use that first-round pick and do something with it. I think as of right now, with 9 defensemen, clearly they're not going to go into the playoffs with 9 defensemen and 12 forwards. It just doesn't make sense. Plus, they still have to activate Matt Murray from LTIR unless they want to keep him on LTIR until the playoffs. But again, I don't think that's wise either. So once Murray is activated, they'll have almost $1 million in cap space with 9 defensemen and 12 forwards. To me, that is just screaming a deal coming through. And I think it would make sense for a defenseman to go who makes a bit of money and that first round pick from there's so many deals. Who's that even from?
Their name rhymes with
Washington. No, Boston. Sorry. Yes, from Boston. Yes, rhymes with bowl. And I think you get a forward, to be honest. And I think you go into the playoffs with 13 forwards and 8 defensemen and 2 healthy goalies. And I think that makes sense. And if you were to do that, if you were to trade Hull, who makes $2 million, and you already have $1 million in cap space, that gives you $3 million. You could get a player who's worth $6 million at 50% retained, and I think now you have the asset to do it in that first round pick if that's what they want to do. And maybe it's a Tyler Bertuzzi, maybe it's a Brock Besser, who knows? But it's that type of middle six player to add scoring depth, because there's no way they go into the playoffs with 9 NHL defensemen. Like, people are going to be unhappy. The players are going to be unhappy if that's what they do.
That's some Tampa Bay shit. They did that.
I guess. And then maybe your extra forward is Matt Nyes if they sign him. I don't know. To me, this just reeks of one more deal coming, and we'll have to see what it is. But overall, I'm happy with the trade, I guess. I liked Rasmus Sandin, but the return was just really great value for basically the Leafs' 7th defenseman.
Absolutely. So grades for both sides, fellas.
I'll give the Leafs B+, and I'll give Washington an A. Honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. That fits for me. The value is good for Toronto. Doing it is a little weird, so I'm going to lower it to a B+. And then Washington, just flipping that pick to get a ready now player and a young guy. That's nice. So
yeah, Sandin is a good player. He's going to be a really good player. I guess they just thought he didn't fit. He wasn't going to get into the playoff lineup, so get some value for him.
There was a month or so that he was their number 1 defenseman.
Yeah. Yeah, when they had injuries this year. Most man games lost. They saw all they needed to see from Rasmus Sandin and thought maybe it's the best time to sell high on the player. Who knows? Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. A surprise deal for sure. All right, the next 2 that we're going to touch on, Pierre Engvall. So we figured that with all of these deals and parts moving around for the Maple Leafs, that one of their forwards was going to be off the roster. And so Pierre Engvall goes to the New York Islanders for a 3rd-round pick in 2024. Chad.
Well, lump in the next one, too, the other deal that...
Sure.
Involved the Leafs.
Then,
just to get it going. Let's do rapid fire here. Let's get it going here.
Yep. So then, and then after that, a 2023 third for Luke Schenn of the Vancouver Canucks, of course, former first-round pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs a number of years ago.
Great story for Schenn coming back to Toronto. He wanted to come back by all accounts, and it seems like he's really excited. His wife is currently 9 months pregnant and is due to give birth basically any day, so I don't know when he's going to play for the Leafs going forward, but they like him. I think they like the grit that he brings, but I just don't know if he's one of their 6 best defensemen. Like we mentioned, they have 9 of them right now, so I don't know where he plays or how often, but we'll see. 3rd-round pick, it's magic beans. Who cares? That's fine. And for Engvall, that was a cap dump. You needed to get rid of $2 million basically. And I'm also fine with that. Like, you've replaced Engvall in the bottom 6 now by adding Achari and Lafferty. And you've got a lot of other players who do kind of the same thing that Engvall does, like a Kerfoot. So to me, not a big deal to lose him. Even though some analytics guys are really high on Engvall, he frustrates the living hell out of me. He has all of the pieces, but he doesn't put it together all the time. One thing on the Engvall deal I'll say is that it's kind of funny that, Dubas, a guy who is seen around the league to like players similar to Engvall, traded him to Lou Lamoriello, who has the reputation for the opposite. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like, Lou likes, more of a Luke Schenn type player than an Engvall, and he gets Engvall for a third. So, yeah, whatever. These deals are about the cap and about adding depth, so that's fine for me.
It's going to stop being just magic beans soon, Chad, when you have like 3 draft picks the next 2 years. So I'm exaggerating, but you do need to draft players to have a team eventually, and Toronto is not going to be doing that anytime soon, especially if they flip that Boston first again. So there's a lot going on there, but I think it makes sense. Engvall, it's kind of like a Pugliarvi thing in my mind, where it's like we're beating that dead horse of trying to make him work in Toronto, and it was time to move on from him and shed some cap and pick up a different type of player in Luke Schenn. So I'm seeing this trade as Engvall for Luke Schenn and having your draft pick a year later. So makes total sense to me. It makes more sense if you had 8 or 7 defensemen. Now you have 9, so I don't know. But Engvall was on his way out. They've got a couple guys for that bottom 6. It's a different look on the bottom 6 finally, so I like it.
Yeah, definitely. And grades for these deals, boys.
B's all around. B's all around.
Case, same with you?
Nah, C's. C+.
C's? Okay.
Sure.
Gotcha. All right, and the last one that we're going to touch on, and this is pretty big for the Edmonton Oilers. A lot of talk about them getting a top 4 defenseman. They get one in Matthias Ekholm from the Nashville Predators, a veteran defenseman who's had a very good career in Nashville. He goes to Edmonton along with a 6th rounder next year, and the Oilers surprisingly give up Tyson Barrie in this deal. Reed Schaefer, he was their first-round pick in last year's draft, a 2023 first and a 2024 fourth, going the other way to the Predators. So clearly Edmonton addressed the need here, although, like I said in our fantasy group chat earlier on, I think they gave up a pretty good puck-moving defenseman in Barrie, but Ekholm is solid, very underrated defenseman, and Nashville gets some more assets here for their rebuild. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to give Nashville an A here right away. They got a lot back here. Essentially 2 first-round picks, like we've been saying in the past here, because he was a first-round pick, Reed Schaefer, and an actual first-round pick, and a 4th, and a guy to continue playing for your team in Tyson Barrie, who's got 43 points in 61 games this year. Nothing to scoff at as a defenseman. But Edmonton does get kind of what they need, I think, drastically. We've said the last 2 years, who is going to play defense for these guys? We kept saying that. Well, Ekholm can play defense and move the puck, so that's a perfect fit. He's going to slot into their top pair immediately. Ekholm has been so overshadowed the last 6 years in Nashville because that T-core has been so good. But yeah, you can't sleep on how good this guy is and how good he'll be for that team in the playoffs. So important trade for Edmonton. They gave up a ton though. So I'll give Edmonton a B+ for trying to help out McDavid and get a well-needed piece, but an A for Nashville.
Yeah, Harper, I know that you mentioned it, that McDavid and Draisaitl both came out and said that they wanted a puck-moving defenseman, and that was what they wanted Oilers management to target. But respectfully, I think they're wrong. And Case, I think you're right. And what they need is a player to play defense, because I forget where I heard this, but someone said, even a team who controls the puck a lot only has it maybe 55 to 60% of the time. What are you doing the other 40%? You need to play defense. You need guys to play defense. So there you go. You guys know I've been harping on this Oilers defense core. Ken Holland, to his credit, has changed it up and made it look different, but I didn't think as it was good enough to get as far as they did last year or do it again this year. Adding Ekholm, I think, makes them a legit contender. They don't have to win games 7-6 now when that guy's on the ice. He can defend, and Case, like you mentioned, he can move the puck as well. In terms of the return, I think, dating back to the draft, I remember not being so high on Reed Schaefer in the first place. I thought it was a bit of a reach where they took him in the first round in the first place. And then another first-round pick, again, that's as good as gone if you're the Oilers, because you needed to trade that pick to get a player to play defense. And I think just overall it makes sense for team composition. And if you're the Preds, wow, what a week you've had. What a week. You've got a lot of assets in return for some players who, if some teams weren't so desperate and this was another year's trade deadline, maybe you wouldn't have got those assets for those players. Who knows? So good for them. David Poile, who will be retiring eventually, and Trotz will be taking over. He's going out with a bang. He's been making some pretty good deals here for this team.
He's leaving Trotz. I'd be laughing if I'm Trotz right now.
Yeah.
Walking in with just a ton of picks and prospects coming back right before you start the job. It's like, oh, I don't.
Yeah, he's just licking his chops. Who should I draft? Yeah, it's awesome. So in terms of value, I'll give Nashville an A, and I'll give. Actually, I didn't mention Tyson Barrie as well. It does suck that you have to subtract from the blue line, like you mentioned, Hart. But again, Ekholm is just much more the player that they need as opposed to Barrie. And if they want to, whether it's this season or next, or I don't know how long Barrie is signed for, but they can flip him. Yeah, they can flip him and get a pick for him and just add to that deep number of draft picks they already have. So I think he's a valuable player that some teams need, similar to a Klingberg. You need that puck moving defenseman, but not every team, not every contender needs that type of player. So I don't mind it for Edmonton. So I'll give Nashville an A+, and I'll give Edmonton a B+.
Yeah, I'm almost going to guarantee right now that we're going to be talking about Tyson Barrie in 1 year's time.
Yep, for sure.
Or here's a crazy idea. Between now and Friday, Poile flips Barrie already somewhere else.
Maybe just retain some of that cap, get even more prospects. You did just bring in Cal Foote. Were you going to put Cal Foote on as the seventh defenseman?
Yeah,
I don't know.
But no, lots of assets. Not to mention they got a second round pick in next year's draft for Nino Niederreiter, so that's another good deal for them with the Winnipeg Jets. So yeah, what a week for Nashville, and who better to take over for David Poile than Barry Trotz, the two guys that were there right from the start.
I know this is going to be a lot to listen to and naming off nonsense, but listen to their drafts in the next 2 years: 2 firsts, a second, 3 thirds, 3 fourths, 2 fifths, and a 6th next year, and then 1 first, 3 seconds, a third, 2 fourths, and a 5th the year after. Wow.
Jeez. Do you have Cap Friendly up right now, Case?
Yeah.
Take a look at Chicago's. I was looking at this the other day. Chicago, because of all the picks they've gotten, and now that Patrick Kane has been dealt. We didn't even talk about the Patrick Kane deal this episode. That was a bit of a weak return, but they had zero leverage in that situation, I guess. But I was looking at this the other day because just talking about all the moves that they've made, they have so many picks. It's ridiculous. Do you have it in front of you? Can you read all the first-round picks they have?
Okay, sure. They have 2 firsts in 2023, 2022, or 2024 and 2025. 3 seconds next year, or this year. 2 seconds the year after. 2 thirds this year and next year. So I'm not going to talk about 4, 5, and 6.
That is just nuts.
The amount of picks in the first 3 rounds in the next year, crazy.
And yes, we didn't mention the Patrick Kane deal. Thank you, Chad. But
that doesn't include the Patrick Kane drafts, by the way.
Right. Right.
Because they're not actually announced yet. Like, it's not.
Yes, and
done.
and that was going to be my next point. That's why we haven't technically touched on it yet, because technically it's not official yet. But yeah, sounds like a conditional second that could be a first if the Rangers make it to the conference finals, going to Chicago along with a fourth rounder, and Chicago retains 50% and some salary retention by Arizona. Surprise, surprise, as well. Speaking of draft picks, I think the Coyotes have like 5 second rounders in 2025 or something. It's crazy. But
the Carolina Hurricanes, Islanders, and Pittsburgh, someone's gonna have to roll the bones here in the next 2 days, because all the other teams in the East are buying like crazy, and this is gonna be a bloodbath in the playoffs. There's just so many good teams in the East.
It's crazy how it's one conference that is just being so aggressive this year, and I'm interested to see what teams like Buffalo, Ottawa, and Detroit do, who are trying to stay in the hunt, stay in the race. Well, Ottawa a bit outside, they're in the hunt, but Detroit and my Sabres are right there. So it'll be interesting to see what those guys do.
The Vegas Golden Knights, first in the West, would slot in very nicely in 7th in the East.
That's a joke.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Such a joke. And by the way, I can't believe the Islanders are still buying. Like, I know they got Engvall, which isn't much, but like they're still looking for another piece. I can't believe they're still buying. Like, it's insane to me.
They're like, the first wildcard spot right now.
Yeah, but why bother? Like, it's just like your team's clearly not good enough. I guess the mentality is you have to get in and then see what happens. But like, in terms of points percentage, they're outside of a playoff spot right now. Yeah. I think Money Puck had them at like 25% to make it. Like, Buffalo has a better shot of making the playoffs because they have so many games in hand. Now, you have to play those games and you have to do well in them, but man, like...
And points percentage. We're in a good spot in terms of points percentage, and so are the Red Wings, surprisingly enough, as well.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, can we wrap this up here?
Yes, just one more thing, like I said about Billy Guerin, it's Lou Lamoriello. It's not supposed to make sense. All right, Fantasy Corner before we wrap up here quick, boys.
No, let's skip the next week.
Okay.
This episode's been too long.
All right, sounds good. Okay, thanks for listening to this one. A lot of big deals today and in the subsequent days before that. So looking forward to the rest of the week and Friday as well, if there are any deals left for Trade Center on TSN, and looking forward to the deadline on Friday at 3 Eastern. So thanks for listening to episode 161. Looking forward to the rest of the stretch, and thanks so much again. Cheers.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details. And don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at patreon.com/boysinthebooth.